Hey guys, my name is Amber. Welcome back to my channel, Amber Reads Romance. Today, I am excited to go over some of my favorite hockey romances. I'm honestly shocked I haven't done a hockey video yet because I absolutely love hockey romance and it's really had a resurgence these last few years. There are so many good hockey books out there. And so if you actually have some hockey recs, leave them down in the comments down below. I'd love to get some more hockey recs, or which one is your favorite. I love hearing from you guys. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. I've been doing booktube for about a year now and I'm having a blast. But anyways, let's go ahead and dive into some of my favorite hockey romances. Okay, so before I go into some of my favorites, I do want to mention that I did do a hockey reading vlog a while ago. So I will try to link that down below. Remember to put it in the cards so that you can check that out if you're interested. I think I read like 3 different books and vlogged my experience. But let's go ahead and dive into some of my favorites. So the first one that I have to mention, because it's like the OG for me, it was the first hockey romance I read, and first fake dating romance I read, and that is The Deal by Elle Kennedy. I absolutely love this. I actually reread this recently, and it still held up for me. This is like one of my favorite hockey romances. This is a new adult college hockey romance. This is between Garrett and Hannah, and Garrett is like the star hockey player. He's kind of a ladies' man, but like not too gross or anything. And Hannah is actually she's like in the art major. I believe she's like in the singing major. She's a singer, and she did really well on a test that everybody else in their class failed. And he really needs to bring his grade up, and he happens to see that she aced it. So he basically starts pursuing her to like, please tutor me. I need help. She's like, I don't have time in my schedule for this. I have too much going on. No. And he like shows up at the restaurant where she's a waitress. He keeps pursuing her. Eventually he notices that she's like crushing on this football player. And Garrett is very popular and very cocky, and he lets her know, hey, I can get you him. We can fake date, and trust me, once you're dating me, he will want you. And he's like, not to be like cocky or anything, but you know, he'll see you with me and he'll want it. And at first she kind of doesn't go for it, but eventually she does. So they start fake dating, but it also turns into kind of like a lessons in sex or just working on sex, because Hannah was actually sexually assaulted. And she has a hard time orgasming. It ruined her previous relationship because she couldn't orgasm. And so it just led to a lot of conflict in their relationship. And so she needs help with that. She wants to figure that out before she starts to date this new guy she's obsessed with. So Garrett offers to help her. And of course, they're going to catch feelings. I loved this because it was like such a friends to lovers too. And you could just feel like the chemistry between them and how much Garrett wanted her. And I just loved it. Like, this is one of my favorites. It was the first one I've ever read, and it really got me into hockey romance. So I have to bring it up first. The other one that I want to bring up from that series is one that I just read, because I've had these books for a long time and I still hadn't finished the Off-Campus series. But this is actually the 3rd book in the Off-Campus series, and that is The Score by Elle Kennedy. I do apologize if my ring light is hitting this. But this is between Dean and I think it's Allie. Yes, Allie. Dean is actually the man whore of the group. In the previous books, you would see him publicly having sex, like in the living room, like in front of the guys. He's very vocal about like, I won't screw virgins, and he doesn't date. And so he's like kind of the man hoe. And then Allie is actually best friends with Hannah from The Deal. And they're actually dorm mates too. And she just broke up with her boyfriend. They've been on again, off again, but mostly on most of college. And so she's trying to keep the breakup going. He is trying to show up at her dorm later to visit her and try to get her back. And so her friend Hannah offers her to go over to Garrett's place where he lives with the other hockey players and just to get away. Unfortunately, Dean's the only one there. And so they end up hanging out all night and they start drinking and they have a one-night stand. But they go after it on this one-night stand. And Dean is like really intrigued by her. He usually doesn't like hook up with the same girls, but he really wants to have sex with her again. So he starts pursuing her for a fling. Elle doesn't know about this because she's the commitment girl. She's always in a relationship. And so she doesn't think she could like do that. But eventually she succumbs because Dean has a lot of charisma. He's such a great personality, even though he's like the man whore and that can be off-putting in books. He doesn't come off that way. He's a very lovable, loyal, good guy, and so you just like him. And I love how honest he always was, you know, about who he was. So they end up starting this fling and kind of like secretly date and, you know, catch feelings and all this stuff. I will say this one was more emotional. Like something happens in the third act that like I didn't see coming and I got really teary-eyed and it was emotional. So it does tackle some emotional stuff later in the book. But I love their dynamic and they were just so cute together and I love Dean. So I would highly recommend this. The next one is one that I'm sure you've seen everywhere, and that is Pucked by Helena Hunting. I actually have only read this book in the series. I need to get back to it. But this is the first book in the Pucked series. And this is between Alex and Violet. And Violet's stepbrother is actually on this NHL team. And so she kind of runs into Alex. They kind of meet eyes. And they end up, I believe, having a one-night stand. It's been a long time since I've read this. But she doesn't really want anything else. She's not interested in hockey boys and all of that. But Alex wants her and he pursues her hard. And I loved Alex. He was so swoon-worthy. Violet can be a little bit much in this book. She's obsessed with the size of his cock and she talks about it a lot. So that can rub a lot of people the wrong way, but I thought it was funny. It was just like whatever. She ends up they end up start dating and everything. But she does have to overcome, like, he has this reputation of being a player because he's like kind of perpetuated that. But he's not a total player. It's just who he comes off as. I do gotta say, I really loved how sweet Alex was in this, and he'd always be checking for consent, and he was just a cinnamon roll hero, and I just really loved them. So I would highly recommend Pucked. Okay, so the next two I have are actually from Sarina Ackroyd, but she is writing as G.A.Mazurke for a hockey series. I was really excited to read these because she usually writes dark romance with the 5 Points Mafia, and so it was interesting to see how she would take on hockey. And this first book, which is Endgame, actually does have ties to the 5 Points Mafia because the hero is related to the O'Donnellys. Anyways, and you will see cameos of them in this series, which is really cool. So this is between Liam and Grace. And what I found really interesting about this was stuff I didn't know, with that, like, there's such a thing called a ballet family. I think that's what it's called. And these families will take in hockey players and like support them, and they live with them because they're so devoted to hockey to help them like reach their goals and get into the NHL and all that kind of stuff. And so Grace's family, they live in Canada, and they were one of these families. And so all her brothers end up playing in the NHL, and they also hosted these other guys, which Liam was one of them. So she became really good friends with Liam, but he was best friends with her older brother. So they kind of lost that perfect connection that they were building. She's really into hockey, but she was always in her brother's shadows. And so she ends up moving away to New York to kind of get away from them. And so they kind of like had that good friendship when they were kids. Liam ended up getting kidnapped because of who he was and went through this traumatic experience. So now he's kind of like been like a shut-in. He's afraid to go places and crowds and all that kind of stuff. He ends up getting traded to the New York Stars. I think that's what it is. Yes, the New York Stars. And he basically is in the same city as her. They had kind of hooked up previously, but she was so drunk that like she doesn't remember it, but he does. So it's a great dynamic to this, but he ends up hiring her as his assistant. and they start to like rebuild their relationship and realize that they are just so much more than friends. So I really loved it. It was a great friends to lovers, and it was really sweet. So that was the first book in the series. The second book is Waiting Game, and I loved this book. This is between Cole and Mia. And Cole was one of the Belay brothers. He was one of the hockey brothers that was like hosted by Grace's family. And so he was really close. Like Grace was like a sister to him. And Mia actually was friends with Grace from the first book, but she kind of betrayed her with reasons. She had her reasons, and she feels really guilty about what she did. But she ends up going to be coaching somebody. She's going to teach somebody, like, because she's an ice skater, a figure skater. And so Cole wants to get more like finesse on the ice. So he ends up doing these lessons, and then they instantly have a connection, and they decide to have a one-night stand. And so he's all in on her. He's super into it till he finds out that this is the girl that betrayed Grace. And so he has to like basically ghost her. Mia's going through a lot. Her uncle owned a bar and he died. And so she's taking over the bar now, and it's got tons of debt. And so she ends up being like screwed over and to pay off all this debt. So she ends up becoming a cam girl. And so, Cole finds out she's a cam girl, becomes a fan, wants to support her individually so she's not doing it for other guys. And then eventually he can't stay away, and they start to secretly date to make sure that they have a real thing before letting Grace know that he's dating Mia when he's not supposed to talk to her anymore. So I really love this because Cole was so swoon-worthy. Cole actually reads romance books. He's really into the smut. He actually bound fanfic for her, which I was just like, this is like written for the romance girlies. So I just loved it. He was amazing. I would highly recommend that. Those books are a little bit longer than most hockey romances, but I couldn't put them down. They're really easy reads. Okay, the next one I have is one of my favorites, and that is Mile High by Liz Tomforde. This is the first book in the Windy City series, and I loved this hockey romance. This is between Xanders and Stevie. Xanders plays he's a hockey player, obviously, and Stevie is actually a flight attendant for like their personal plane that is just for the hockey team. So she kind of has some run-ins with Xander where he kind of messes with her and tries to give her grief like on the plane. And she's not like starstruck by him and doesn't take his shit because her brother is actually, a pro NBA player. So she's not really impressed. And he likes that. He likes that she pushes back, and they kind of have this great banter. They end up having a one-night stand because they want to get out of their systems because they're super into each other. Stevie is a curvy heroine, and I loved her representation in this because it felt very realistic to what it's like, being curvy or your self-confidence, but it's not like beating down on like, oh, I'm so horrible being a curvy girl. If that makes sense. I hate how some books do that. But I could really relate to her character, and I just loved it. And so the one-night stand, obviously, it's not enough for them. They have amazing chemistry, and they kind of have to secretly date because she's not allowed to date any of the players. And so that can be bad for her. If like she gets caught, she could lose her job. And so I just really loved this. It is a little bit longer too for hockey romance, but honestly, it was so well done. I really loved this hero and heroine, and it's such a great series, so I definitely would recommend this one. And one of my favorites of all time, and I think this one I read for that hockey blog, and this is Him by Sarina, Bowen, and Elle Kennedy. This is like one of my favorite hockey romances because it's male. And I discovered after reading this last year, I finally realized how much I love male romance, and this is such a great romance. So this is between Wes and Jamie, and Wes and Jamie were like best friends. They would always go to this hockey camp every year together, and they were best friends. Problem is Wes is gay, and he was in love with Jamie. he secretly pined for him, and Jamie had no idea that Wes was gay, and he never told him. When they were back at the camp one time, they did this. They were always betting each other, and they did a bet that like the loser had to give the other person a blowjob or something like that. And so they actually do it. And Wes feels really guilty because he feels like he kind of took advantage of that situation. He basically cuts ties with Jamie for years. And then now they're like, I believe in college playing hockey, about to go pro. And they're both like in the Final Four competition. So Wes goes up to Jamie and kind of apologizes and lets him know like what really happened, how he's gay and all this kind of stuff. And then they end up going to be coaches at this hockey camp together. Jamie never was interested, or I can't remember. Sorry, it's been a while. But one of them wasn't really interested in doing it, but the other one, so they end up going at the same time. And Jamie starts to, like, he's just super open about who Wes is, about sexuality. He starts to get really turned on by Wes. And so he starts to kind of question his sexuality, and he's totally open with it. And so they start to connect, and they're like in the same room, of forced proximity, and they start to get a little sexual stuff going on here. But they're also about to go pro in different cities, so there's that little conflict at the end here. I still need to read Us, which is the second part of this, but I absolutely love this. It was so sexy. Like, it was hot. Absolutely love this one. The final two that I want to bring up are from Odette Stone. This is from her Vancouver Wolves hockey series. The first one is Puck Me Secretly. This is between Max and Rory, and Max and Rory are actually on a plane together, and they survive. It almost goes down. They survive, and she ends up confiding that I think she couldn't get like orgasms or had issues. And so they end up having a one-night stand, thinking they'll never see each other again. The problem is Max is a new player for her father's hockey team, and she's actually being trained to kind of be the new GM for that hockey team. And so now they're kind of like in the same circle here and trying to keep that in the past. Also, Max has like kind of been fucking up, and so her dad wants her to like keep an eye on him, and so they kind of have to be in close proximity and all of that. So I really loved it. It was a fun time. I think Odette kind of does these over the top bad guy or third act stuff, but I thought this one was a really fun hockey romance. The next one is Home Game, and I think this is one of people's like favorites. This is between Ryan and Zoe, and Ryan is actually kind of having trouble doing his own taxes. He's at a coffee shop. Zoe sees she's really smart, and she kind of helps him. And he ends up asking her, hey, can you help me? And she tells him, I have to get somewhere at this time. I can't be late. She has to get to a homeless shelter because she's actually homeless. And so he's like, yeah, I promise I'll get you there. Didn't get her in time, so she was like kind of stuck out. So he ended up letting her crash at his place. Later on, she kind of like gets attacked and she's in the hospital, and they ended up calling him. And so he feels really bad and feels for her, so he lets her stay with him. And this is a very slow burn, and they start to really like fall for each other. But there's also that thing of like the power dynamic of that, of him, her staying with him and all that kind of stuff. But it was a really, really sweet, slow burn romance. So I kind of think that one's probably the best one in the series that I've read so far. But those are my romances that I have for this hockey video. I'm sure I'll be doing more in the future. Again, let me know your favorite hockey romances or one series that I need to be reading. Leave me comments down below. As always, please subscribe, comment, like, and I will see you on the next one.